it like it is. You don't care what you think of it.
I knew what Dale Hansen was. Unfortunately, right? Unfortunately.
I remember Dale Hansen countdown when I first came to the league.
So Jerry Jones and I and a couple other guys.
This has been a great year, Ted. Dale.
We love Dale. We love Dale.
Dale. He keeps you in touch with sports.
If you're ready, jump right in. Dallas Dialogue with Dale.
Hola, shalom, and hey there, neighbor. Welcome to the latest episode of Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen. I'm your host, Mark Villasana, and joining me as always is my BFF, marketing manager for Northwest Insurance, Miss Lila Levy. Hey, Lila, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Hola and shalom. And hey there, partner.
Hola to you, my friend. Also joining me today is a man we call the franchise around here.
Yeah, let's go with that.
WFAA TV legend and now podcast guru, Mr. Dale Hansen. Hey, Dale, how are you doing?
Well, actually, I'm excited about this one. As I was telling Lila this morning, I only slept about 4 hours last night because, as both of you know, this is one of my favorite topics in all formats and in all occasions. So I'm kind of excited about it. But before we do that, I always want to throw out that one question that bugs me about insurance. So let me do this.
Please.
When people buy insurance, whether it's home or car or any and all of it, is it only about the cost? Is everybody just looking to see how much they pay? Or more importantly, should it be only about the cost and not consider the actual benefits of the agency and the policy itself?
Well, thank you for asking me that. Right now, everything is so fast paced. In today's world, we want it yesterday, right? So right now, everybody, the trend is let's get online. Let's just see how fast we can get it, see how cheap we can get it. Unfortunately, that does not benefit you come claim time, because that's where you really need your agent to help you, because they know more about what you have insured. They know more about the risk factors that were involved, and they can actually go to bat for you. So my agency has tried to stay away from that fast-paced type of sell, because when I got into the industry 30 years ago, I was a counselor. I was an insurance counselor. I wasn't an insurance salesman. And now, I could put on a white apron and a wig and call myself Flo, and all of a sudden, I'm an insurance salesman. So the industry has changed, but me being a family-owned business, I guess it's old man syndrome. I'm going to stick to my guns and actually try to service people and help.
Well, I like that, and of course, I ask you because your name's on the title of the show,
well,
so that's part of the deal.
Well, I appreciate that.
Before I get up on my soapbox, and I will today a lot, by the way, I have to tell you this one quick story about cost and how this all plays into a person's life. Henry Aaron, the great baseball player, who was and still is to me and always will be the all-time home run king. I don't want to hear anything about Barry Bonds. It's Hank Aaron. He wrote a book years ago, and in the book he said, I knew I had succeeded in life when I bought what I liked instead of what I thought I could afford. And then says, I never look at a price. On anything I buy, I only decide if I like it, I buy it. I don't care about the price. I thought, that's a great way. That's a great thing to do. So I did it. And he almost bankrupted me on occasion. I bought a tie one time because I got my clothes, but I always tried to shop it where I kind of knew what the prices were.
Right.
But I bought a tie one time, and this was years ago, and I get home after buying it, and I'm looking at the price tag, and it was like $185, which I thought, for me, was just outrageous. But every time I wore that tie on the air, I would get 10, 15, 20 emails saying, where do I buy it? Conversely, Pete Delkus walked up to me one day and he said, Dale, look at this tie, the weather guy at WFAA. He said, look at this tie. He said, it cost me $20. And I looked at him and said, yeah, I know. But I mean, Lila, do you buy what you like, or do you buy what you can afford after you check the price?
So I do both. I've been able to buy more of what I like the last few years, but I still do look at price, because sometimes those more expensive things aren't as good as the things that are more affordable. So I would say that I do a combo of both.
What do you do, Mark?
Well, I'm like you. I came out of the gates and I was just, if I had it, I'm going to spend it. And what's the use of having it? And then I had four kids, in college at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of altered my whole way of thinking. So I'm
changed everything
right now, and and Lila's buying stuff without checking the price. I need to check, see what I'm paying her.
Yeah.
Because, things have changed for me, and now it's, I'm gonna have to turn over that item and see what the price is.
Well, I tell you the truth, it is one of the problems because my pension doesn't go nearly as far as that paycheck used to go. But it is one of the adjustments I've had to make in my life now that I've been retired. Is that now I go to the restaurant, I decide what it is I like, and then I look over to the right to see just exactly what it costs. And sometimes that 8-ounce fillet is not all that bad compared to that 16-ounce strip.
Agreed, for sure.
As I've told both of you for a couple of months now, this is far and away my favorite topic, whether it's for this particular podcast, whether it's sitting on my patio. So let me crawl up on my soapbox for just a moment, and it goes something like this.
Let's do it.
Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Winston Churchill said that in 1948, and it has never been more true or more important than it is now. Instead of banning the books that teach us about our American history, the good and the bad, we should have Churchill's words on every blackboard in every classroom in America. We cannot hide from the ugly underbelly of this great country, and we cannot ignore the parts of our past so many of us wish we could. It's why this argument we're having now about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, disgusts me and sickens me that we have strayed from the path so many fought so hard and so bravely to build. I've always wanted to know why, when the racist among us say that diversity and inclusion somehow means unqualified, so many, including too many liberal Democrats, university officials, TV executives, and our best lawyers who know better, just nod along to get along instead of raising their voices objecting to the racist and incredibly stupid position it is. Charlie Kirk, the executive director of Turning Point USA and a self-described evangelical Christian who, like too many self-identified Christians, has apparently never read the Bible and makes a mockery of the teachings of Jesus, said recently when he gets on an airplane and realizes the pilot is black, he hopes he's qualified. Imagine the fear he would feel if Jesus was flying the plane. I wonder if he thinks a brown man from the Middle East with long hair and a beard is qualified to fly. A man who was nothing if not about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Charlie Kirks of the world denigrate and question a person's character and qualifications if their skin is brown or black, then spend 4 months a year lying on a beach trying to match it. I can't be the only one who sees the absolute ignorance and the stunning hypocrisy in that. In my 41 years on Dallas television, there was never a single person of color promoted or hired for a top position where someone didn't say they were only promoted because of the color of their skin. And yet when I was hired, no college degree, fired from 8 of 11 jobs, had never been in a TV studio when I was hired the first time. I didn't even know what a teleprompter was. No one ever said I was only hired because of the color of my skin, but in part, I was. There's not a black man in America who can do what I did. Oh, they could do the job, do it even better. But fired 8 times and move up to a better job every time, they would never get the chance I was given time and time again. No one should expect the job they're not qualified to do, and no one is asking for that. DEI simply means everyone now gets the opportunity only white Americans had for almost 200 years. And if you really don't understand that America, you don't understand America at all. The doors of opportunity were closed to people of color for hundreds of years in this country. It's not just a coincidence we've had only one man of color elected as president, and then we demanded to see his birth certificate because we just weren't convinced he could be one of us. I really do wish I lived in that colorblind world where everyone is treated equally, everyone is judged by who they are, not by how they look or the religion they follow. But I don't fly on the Starship Enterprise. I live in this world. And this world is not learning from its history. It's trying too hard to repeat it. And as Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And we should put that on every blackboard in every classroom in America, too. I'm off the soapbox for about 2 seconds, and I'm getting back up there again.
Well,
Mark.
I love it. Per usual, you came in hot, Dale.
I tried to.
I love that. We discussed this off air a couple weeks ago, and you told me you were going to come in with a subject, and you felt strong about it. And there's people have so many strong opinions about it, whether you're in favor of it or if you're against it. And I'm curious. I do want to pack all the negatives. I want to push back a little bit on some of the things you said, but I want to get Lila's take. Lila, what do you think Dale had to say?
Here's the thing with DEI is that I can't understand any disadvantages of it. I just can't. I can't wrap my brain around disadvantages of DEI. And here's why. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you include people, they have a sense of belonging and they're going to work harder and they're going to do better. And it shows itself in the workplace. They're there are going to be higher financial targets hit. People are going to want to stay at jobs longer. There's going to be a sense of community. Those are some of the points that I see as total advantages for DEI. And I've heard many of the disadvantages of it, but I still cannot wrap my brain around those disadvantages.
What's the disadvantage of it? That some white person claims that they were somehow discriminated and eliminated from a job because some unqualified person was promoted? I mean, that's the only so-called disadvantage I've heard, and that's a ridiculous argument.
Right.
Well, let me take my sombrero hat off here and put my red hat on here and push back a little bit. People say PR, this is all one big PR stunt. DEI, what in the workforce, what place does it really have? It doesn't affect laborers. All it really does is feeding into corporate America's guilt. They're having classes for the white collar guys who really won't put any plans or any procedures in effect that's going to affect people.
But how do we know that? How do we know that?
It bears out in the attitudes of workforce. The workforce, bottom line is we are a capitalistic society. People, all they care about is money. If you pay me the money, I don't care what you do. If you're not paying me the money, I'm not satisfied. The last thing I want to hear about is me including someone else or any kind of diversity. That's just one of the many points that people put that.
I mean, I've heard it a lot, and I've got a half a dozen examples that we'll get to as the hour goes on. But here's the most simple one of all, and it's kind of what you were saying, Lila, about having this diversity. I always wanted to have the diversity in my sports departments at any station I was at because they always brought a different point of view that I might not have been aware of. Mm-hmm. We were the first station to bring a woman into the sports department, which brought a lot of different views in. And then when I hired Chris Arnold, who was a big sportscaster in local radio at the time, and I hired Chris Arnold, one, because I thought he was incredibly good at what he does, but I also wanted to have the athletes looking past the camera to a person asking the question who looked like them, which I think is incredibly important. But this was one simple little thing that Chris Arnold taught me. And if I needed anything to make me convinced that diversity, equity, and inclusion is vital to the process, this was it. Back in the 80s, they started having all these radio talk shows. It was Brad Sham and Randy Galloway and Norm Hitzges. So we decided to do a story on how and why these radio shows were being formed and who was dominating in the ratings. So Chris Arnold and Arnold Payne, my photographer back then, who happens also to be a black man, they went out, interviewed everybody, and they came back and said, "Yeah, we got all four of them." And I swear to you, I remember this like it was yesterday. And I said, "All four of them?" I said, "There's only three. There's Brad Sham, Norm Hitzges, and Randy Galloway." They said, "No, we got Roger Brown. He's got a show in South Dallas." And I said, "Roger's got a sports talk show in South Dallas that primarily was geared toward the black community." Okay. So we ran a story highlighting the benefits and the arguments and who's good and bad on all four of them. I got swamped with letters and phone calls from the black community, from South Dallas in particular, saying, "Oh my God, thank you, Hansen. You're the only guy that recognizes that there's more to the world than Brad Sham and Randy Galloway and Norm Hitzges."
Inclusion.
And my honest answer was, yeah, because I have Chris Arnold working for me, because I have Arnold Payne who was aware of it. I've got a bunch of these. I'm going to get into a bunch of them as we go. But I'm telling you, it just sickens me that we have lost sight, because I agree with you, Mark. at the end of the day, the corporations simply want to make money. But now we've allowed it to seep down into our universities. People make decisions. Nobody seemed to have a problem for 100 years about white families getting their kids into college only on a legacy qualification. Their main qualification was their dad went to Harvard, or their dad went to Princeton, or their grandfather. Nobody seemed to have a big problem with that. But now we say we need to diversify this. We need to make sure that people who are qualified get the opportunity. Somehow some little girl in San Antonio feels like she's been discriminated against and files a lawsuit. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I hear what you're saying. Believe me, being a man of color myself, I've felt it on both ends, and I've been privy to both sides of the fence, if you will. I tell you what, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back. And there's something I want to discuss, because no one's denying that there hasn't been discrimination throughout this country. But let's talk about if the pendulum has swung too much and there's reverse discrimination.
That's the question.
So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back on Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, but I have a question for you. What's going to happen if an accident happens at your home? Maybe a fire, or a flood, or even a burglary. Well, with Northwest Insurance Agency, all of those thoughts can just stay thoughts. Because when you're covered under the sombrero, you're covered for any accident imaginable. So give us a call today or visit us at nwagencies.com and let us give you the peace of mind you deserve.
Northwest Insurance.
Okay, we are back on Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen. Dale, when we left, we were talking about how, the propensity of discrimination in the country. No one's denying that. But to push back, go ahead.
I would argue that some people are denying that.
Well, that is
No, wait,
true.
yeah.
That
You
is
know
true.
some people are denying it.
There's a whole segment of the country that doesn't even live in the reality. But we're talking about people that live in reality here with us and listen to the show and understand where you're coming from. People will say, though, what about reverse discrimination? The pendulum has swung so far. Now, the white man can't get a fair shake. We're giving jobs to people who aren't qualified. We're just trying to fill quotas. We're not even interviewing people based on resumes. We're just saying, hey, here comes a man of color. Here comes a woman of a different sexual orientation, and we need to hire them. What do you say to that?
Well, I first start off with, I don't think for a moment, and you used the phrase, I'm a little bit surprised that you would, but that is the standard argument, and probably because it's drilled into your head from hearing it so much. There's no one saying hire the unqualified person. That's always the go-to phrase. And just to make this as political as I possibly can, does anybody think Pete Hegseth is the most qualified person to be the Secretary of Defense?
God, yeah.
Have you seen his hair, Dale? He's got fantastic hair.
He's got a fantastic.
You have to be insane to think
he
he's
should
qualified.
be deported because he's got tattoos all over his arm, and we know that if you have tattoos, you are a member of a gang.
I think I saw.
And Pete Hegseth's arms are covered in tattoos. I mean, you look at the Trump administration cabinet. That's where this whole argument falls apart. I'm sorry. You've got a woman in charge of the Department of Education, Linda McMahon, who thinks that artificial intelligence is a steak sauce. She refers to it as A1. She doesn't even know that it's AI for artificial intelligence, and she's in charge of the Department of Education. I mentioned Pete Hegseth. You remember when they took the picture of when the Congress passed the big beautiful bill? This was a picture that made me throw up in my throat, and no one, I haven't heard anybody comment on it. They're in the Oval Office. Trump is signing the new legislation. There's like 30 to 35 people around him. Not a single person of color. Not a single person of color in the picture. And this is a bill that is designed to benefit America. And where does America look like that? Where everybody is white. We started this argument in the 60s primarily to bring America into the 21st century so that it looked like America. And it has become, as you said, Mark, this argument of, well, the white person's being discriminated. Oh, shut up. Shut up. You're just not.
But so what you just said, you said you said there was not a single person of color in that picture, in that room. Does this really look like America? But this administration wants that to be the picture of America. That's what they want. We're going back to Jim Crow.
They argue that promoting someone of color means, number one, that you've hired someone unqualified, which is absolutely not true. And this particular and I really don't mean to make it as political as I am, but it is political, unfortunately, because we said this the other day. I said this entire argument about DEI is based in racism. It's absolutely based in racism and racism only. Now, let me be very clear about this. I don't think for a moment that 75 million, 78 million people who voted for Donald Trump are racist. I don't believe for a moment that every Trump supporter is racist. But I absolutely believe that every racist is a Trump supporter. If you follow that, pay attention to this, because this is important to me.
A lot of headroom.
I don't think for a moment that every Trump supporter is a racist.
Right.
But I absolutely believe that every racist is a Trump supporter. And I do think you hear the dog whistles from this administration all the time. And the biggest dog whistle of all is, as Charlie Kirk said, I'm just not sure that black man is qualified to fly a plane. And my first argument is, and I haven't heard anybody ask it, Charlie, when corporate America is all about making money, do you really think that they put an unqualified pilot in the seat? How do you jump to that conclusion? I just think that's a straw man argument that I swear to you just doesn't stand up under scrutiny, especially when you then go back and say, well, what was your actual qualifications to get into that college? Oh, that's right. Your dad went to that college. Your mom went to that college. Your grandparents went to that college. But you moved to the head of the line because your dad donated millions of dollars to that school. Your grades don't get you in some cases. I'm not saying every case, but I guarantee you there are people in colleges, which I never went to, by the way. There are people in colleges who are there because their family wrote a check or their family knew somebody when they went to that college years ago. This argument just falls apart to me. I'm sorry, it just does.
Well, we're going to deal in facts here. There's no deniability that the administration, the programs that have been presented are, in fact, lean towards a white America, if you will. That is out there. But that aside, I would argue back that the reason we're here today is because of programs like DEI. People have felt forced upon that these programs such as these, beliefs such as these have been forced upon them, ergo that pushes everybody back into the corner. And now here we are. Here we are. We have idiots like Charlie Kirk saying he wouldn't let, he'd be hesitant to get on a plane if a black one was flying. So, if we have programs like this, but look what the end result has been.
I get it that they feel put upon. And again, it's the loudest dog whistle you can blow, is to say, just for example, that the Mexicans are coming in and taking all our jobs. Do we have a lot of white people that want to pick the crops? Do we have a lot of white people that want to work in the animal plants in Iowa, butchering and skinning cows? I'll never forget, 60 Minutes years ago, there was a white dairy farmer in Wisconsin, might have been the whitest man I've ever known in my life. He said, if we had to hire white American workers, or just for that matter, American workers, in the dairy barns in Wisconsin, milk would be $20 a gallon. I talk a lot about my most conservative friend, Bruce, who's a great human being. He's just wrong about his politics. He's a roofer. He went to Oklahoma years ago and said, just to prove to you, I'm going to walk the talk. I'm hiring only American workers. He goes to Oklahoma just after the tornadoes had devastated the state, runs ads in all the trade publications, whatever. 10 days go by, 0 applications. I mean, what person in America wants to crawl up on a hot roof in Tulsa in the summertime?
Right.
He then calls his foreman down at Lancaster and says, get over to the job place where all the day workers hang out, recruited a bunch of primarily Mexican workers, made $1 gazillion. And I look at him to this day and I go, so those damn Mexicans just took all the jobs They're not taking the jobs. Unfortunately for them, they're taking a lot of the jobs that the Americans don't want and won't do. But there is, without question, a segment of our society that we have to address and we have to somehow fix it, that feels that everything that's gone wrong in their life, they need to blame it on to the migrant. They need to blame it on to the brown or black person. And that's just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. I don't know how we get out of this cycle, but I do believe this. If we don't find a way out, we're doomed. I absolutely believe we're doomed.
There's another thing, too, that bothers me. And it's really easy to say, for someone to say, I don't like DEI, or I do like DEI. But I'm really focusing on the said person saying, I don't like DEI, I'm against DEI. No, say it out loud what D, E, and I stand for. Say it, and then really argue your argument. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just these random letters, DEI, because you could say, I don't like ABC, but really say it, like own it. If you don't like diversity, equity, and inclusion, really, you don't like inclusion? Because for me,
no, a lot of people don't.
And they don't. And for me, I'm not trying to get all like sappy here, but for me, a large part of my personality is inclusion, including people. Because growing up, a lot of times I was not included. So that's a big sore spot for me. It is a part, it's really a big part of my personality. And I can't, as I said, I can't wrap my mind around people that want to exclude. But if you're going to say that, then own it and say those words instead of just saying, I don't like DEI.
It's like I said to Mark today when I say this is all right. Have you ever had a person come up to you and say, by the way, I am incredibly racist, and I do think blacks and Mexicans and browns are unqualified? I don't ever have anybody say that to my face.
No.
Now, they'll say that to me in an anonymous email.
Of course.
But I put my face behind everything I believe.
Right.
And I'm proud of what I believe. Whether you agree or disagree, I stand by it. What I find funny is that when I confront people, I said, "Oh, so you're saying that black people are unqualified because you're a race?" Well, no, I just don't think. And then they stop because they say, "How do they explain DEI when you ask them to?" I mean, for the most part, they can't. I have more facts, by the way, whenever you're ready. So.
Well, I just want to address, I do want to address something as the resident Mexican here. Dale was right. There are not a lot of people out there that want to do the jobs that the Mexican people are willing to do. I see it every day. I would say 90% of my clientele, and Lila can attest to this, are Hispanic people.
Yes.
Hard-working people come in dirty every day to make their payments because they've been working hard all day.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of American citizens that want to go out there and do that type of work. But again, to push back, where are you guys say who would not want diversity, equity, and inclusion? Who would not want these programs? Where are the metrics that say these programs benefit anything? You guys have a feeling, and I tend to agree with your feeling, but show me pure data where it helps.
Well, I think it benefits across the board. I use this argument from a very early age in my life. When I grew up, everybody on television was white. Iola Johnson in 1973 was hired at WFAA and first person in Dallas. So it only took like 25, 28 years. The WFA is on the air. And for 28 years, they went, we're going to hire only the best people. And they just happened to all be white. Iola Johnson is also considered by most people who supposedly know to be the first person of color to anchor a television show in America. So I reverse the argument. You say, where would it benefit? Who would it help? When I grew up watching late night television with Johnny Carson, watching the local news, watching every game broadcast on TV, and every single person was white. It was easier for me to dream about being the next Ray Scott, the next Pat Summerall, the next Howard Cosell, the next Johnny Carson, whatever. What if I was growing up and everybody on television was black? I'm watching TV in the 60s, and everybody is black. Would I then sit there and go, I want that job?
Yeah.
And I said this about John McKay, our great news anchor for 20 plus years, when he retired. He was an absolute credit to his race, the human race. Because for 20 plus years, every kid of color, and Gloria Campos did the exact same thing, every kid of color could tune in to WFAA for more than 20 years and go, and I've met hundreds of them over the years. I think I could do that. I compare it to the sports world. I think it's one of the reasons you see very few, although we did the podcast last month about Cooper Flag, but you see very few white kids playing pro basketball today because it's dominated by American blacks. And I think kids grow up with, I need to learn how to play hockey. I need to learn how to play soccer because they don't have that role model. That's how it improves it. Now, when John McKay was hired, there were several people in our newsroom that said, well, you know why they needed to put a black guy. The fact that he's got a doctorate, and he's actually Dr. John McKay now, irrelevant. The fact that he's got a storied career that he built just like all of us from the ground up, irrelevant. Iola Johnson comes along in the 70s, irrelevant. She got the job because she was black. Gloria Campos, who did all the small market stuff and worked her way up, they wanted to appeal to the Hispanic audience. That's the only reason she was there. But when they promoted Cynthia Izagari, I had a woman walk into the little lunchroom area, and she was very upset because she didn't get the job. And she goes, the only reason they promoted her because they wanted a person of color. I'm like, yeah, because no one has ever hired a beautiful white woman who couldn't find City Hall without their phone because she was beautiful. Nobody ever did that, which they've done a million times. Yeah. And again, I go back to, if we don't, and it's unfortunate, as I said, I wish I lived on the Starship Enterprise, but if we don't force it on some people to break this cycle, how do we break it? Because white people, I want to say this a little bit, but it's like the NFL, bring it back to my wheelhouse, and Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys and the NFL in particular. White people hire white people. If you watch The Daily Show, which I love The Daily Show, but like when Ronnie Chang is hosting, they have a lot of Asian guests. When Desi Lydic is hosting, they have a lot of female guests. People hire and work with people they know. So if you don't break the cycle and you don't break the mold, how do you convince rich white guys to hire the black guy, the Mexican guy, the Hispanic guy, the woman? You have to put some kind of an incentive in place.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a break. But when we come back, let's talk about, because you brought up all these jobs in the media. Let's talk about how media can affect perspective.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's what's happening here. I think a lot of times the media, and it happens in almost everything in our political culture these days, they influence the perspective of people, whether or not it's true or not. So let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll discuss that and some other points. You've been listening to Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen, and we'll be right back.
Whether you're racing to work or just enjoying a cruise on a Sunday afternoon, we can do that. It does not matter if it's a beat-up clunker of a daily driver or a supercar that you love with all your heart, we cover it. Perhaps you need business insurance to get on a job site or just want that safety net for your employees, we have that also. Don't forget about your most important asset of them all, your home. What I'm trying to say is that at Northwest Insurance Agency, we do it all.
Northwest Insurance. Get covered under the umbrella.
Northwest Insurance.
Okay, we are back on Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen. Dale, Lila, when we left, we were talking about the media and what role they play in all this.
Yeah, it's getting heated up in here.
I mean, you have one network, MSNBC, who has one perspective on this whole situation.
Yeah.
You flip over to Fox, and it's a different world. And I don't know where CNN lies in all this. It depends on what the day of the week is. But Dale, you were in the media for so long. What can we do? Because we only can see and hear what we see and hear.
Well, this is about a 3 or 4 podcast segment if we're going to go into the media. So I'm going to give you the overview, but you described it perfectly. I mean, MSNBC is a very, very liberal organization with a liberal point of view. CNN is trying to be all things to all people, and I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, you can't be. But what I find funny, and I've done this a dozen times, I tune in and MSNBC is talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and then I tune over to CNN and CNN's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and I said, Oh, this is good. Let me go to Fox. And they're talking about Hillary Clinton's emails.
Which are very
Or they're
important.
talking about Hunter Biden, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So, but Fox has made a fortune doing that. And unfortunately, I really mean this, unfortunately, there's people who love that silo. Consequently, MSNBC decided to have their silo. And then CNN, which I get a lot of blowback on this, but I do think CNN is trying to be all things to all people, which is why they're the third-rated network now. But there's a serious problem there because I do still think, and this takes me back again, every news anchor in the 60s, and I mean, it was Max Robinson in gosh, I forget the year, but years after Iola Johnson was on ABC as a part-time news anchor.
Right.
I mean, it was, John Chancellor, Huntley and Brinkley, Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrell, Dan Rather,
Right.
Peter Jennings. You're sitting at home, and I've talked to so many people of color about this, that they look at the TV and they didn't see anyone who looked like them. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference in their lives. This is your opportunity, Lila. I'm pointing at you. Go.
Well, I will say it definitely does make a difference. We were talking earlier, and I brought up how I was friends with Ed Asner when he was alive, and I was taking him to the airport when he had been in town a few years ago, and we saw a family leaving a restaurant in the hotel. It was in Hotel Zaza, and it was a black family, and they came up and they were like, "Is that who we think it is?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. It's Ed Asner." And they came up and they said, "Oh my gosh, we love you, and we love the Mary Tyler Moore Show." And they were so excited and took a picture with him. And then when he and I went outside and we were getting in my car, he said, "For years and years and years, I've had a lot of black people come up to me and compliment the Mary Tyler Moore Show." Because if y'all remember, the Mary Tyler Moore Show came out in the 70s,
Right.
which was a troubled decade. But they had on, not every single episode and every single season, they had John Amos on as a sports anchor. And he said that black people would come up to him and other members of the cast and thank them for having him on the show as a positive role model.
Well, that's a great segue, and I'm glad you brought up the 70s, because we talked about media, we talked about perspective. In the 70s, the sitcoms were all, hell, Red Fox said the N-word on Sanford and Son. Chico and the Man made fun of Hispanic people.
Good Times, the family.
I grew
they
up-
were constantly one episode away from being tossed out of their apartment.
I grew up in an era where it was okay to address your nationality, your ethnicity.
Yeah.
Now we have these networks that are pulling everybody apart and telling us that it's all bad. And my question is to both of you, how do we combat that in day-to-day life? Because I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do think this is part of the evolution. Bill Maher said this one time, and as a hot topic as this was, I absolutely agree with him. A lot of people don't, obviously, but I do. Is that when people are trying to rewrite our history to bring it forward, and as we've evolved as a people, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As Bill Maher, though, said, if you were rich and white in 1700, you would own slaves. And I think he's absolutely right about that. Slaves were all over the world. Now, were there some people in 1700 who went, no, I'm not, that's not right. A very small minority of people. I mean, the man that we revere on our dollar bill owned slaves. I've been to George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. I've seen the slave quarters, and it's inhumane what George Washington did to those people. Thomas Jefferson, who I put right up there, he owned slaves and supposedly had children with slaves. That was what they did at that time. Now, some people want to get rid of them, of course, because of that. I look at it from Bill Maher's perspective that we evolve. You talk about there was an episode on Saturday Night Live with Chevy Chase and Richard Pryor, and they're doing the word thing. And finally, Chevy Chase uses the N-word or uses some slang word, and Richard Pryor goes honky, and then he uses the N-word, and Richard Pryor goes dead honky.
I remember that. That was awesome.
But it was on network television, and we all kind of went, oh, yeah, But we've evolved from that.
It was used in Brian's song. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
That was in that classic movie that everyone reveres and cries at.
Well,
Chris Rock does it and gets away with it, but I'm in that. I don't like it anymore.
Let me put on again my red hat. Why can't I? If things were better back then, why do I even have to address this diversity, equity, inclusion? Why can't we all just be ourselves and
just insult whoever we want?
Best man wins.
Well, it's what they're trying to do now. You don't think Washington Redskins is offensive? Have you ever heard the term Redskins in a positive light? I mean, every Western that I watched, I wasn't bothered by it in the 50s, in the early 60s as a kid, watching all the Westerns. I never once heard a guy walk into a bar in Dodge City and go, I got my Redskin buddies here. No, it was a slur on the Native American or the American Indian. Now we evolved 30 years later. Let's not do that. The words that they used about gay people, we've evolved. Of course it's uncomfortable and it's wrong to do it because is everybody offended by it? Well, apparently not, because I say Chris Rock uses the N-word, has made a great career out of doing it. But there's just nothing wrong with having a certain amount of respect for another person's feelings. That's not, despite what some people in Washington today will tell you, that's not being weak or silly or stupid. That's being the best part of America. That I gain no pleasure by referring to anyone by their lowest common denominator. And since we decided as a society, now, does it go too far that some comedian gets canceled because he used a word that he thought was, yeah, of course. But that's part of the process. It's the same thing with, do some companies, and I'm sure they have, do some companies promote some people just out of a desire to match the DEI qualifications? Oh, maybe. But when you flip it around, and brings it back to my wheelhouse, if I may, Darrell Royal was the legendary football coach at the University of Texas. He started in 1956. He said this, and this is probably one of the quotes I used on the air that got me, if not the most, in the top 3 of negative blowbacks I've ever gotten for anything I ever said. But again, I stand by it. Darrell Royal said in a book that as my coaching career at University of Texas went on, I never looked at race. I never saw color. I only recruited the best athlete I could find. Darrell Royal didn't have a black player step on the field until 1970. He recruited Julius Whittier. Whittier, I believe it was. Yeah, Julius Whittier, 1969. So from 1956 until 1969, Darrell Royal only recruited the best athlete he could find, and he never recruited a black guy. And I said on the air at WFAA, hey, coach, if it's true that you only recruited the best athlete you could find, and you didn't recruit a black athlete until 1969, I'm thinking you might have missed a couple.
Maybe.
It's the most outrageous line I've ever heard. I never saw color, which is, again, what everybody says about DEI. I'm completely colorblind, but I only hire white guys.
Well, I'm kind of going against my argument here, but I'll one-up you. I saw a comedian on Netflix or somewhere, and he was talking about how everybody lauds Bear Bryant. Everybody loves the great Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant didn't have a black player on his team until 1975. I mean, hell, we'd been to the moon already.
With all white guys, by the way.
All white guys. But Bear Bryant he was a warrior because he had a black player in 1975.
This is why the argument about only hiring the best guy or the best person falls apart to me. And it's why I don't see anything wrong with what the NFL is still trying to do. At least now, they may give up on this because, a lot of universities and a lot of corporations have said, we're done with DEI. They bend the knee to Trump. But think about this. The Dallas Cowboys have been in business for 65 years. 65 years. Jerry Jones has had 9 head coaches. The Cowboys have had 10. Tom Landry, the great Tom Landry, for 29 years, which obviously proved his greatness. Then Jerry Jones hired Jimmy Johnson, that everybody else wanted to hire at that time. Since that time, he hired 8 more coaches and not a single black head coach. Now, let's just review for a moment. Barry Switzer, nobody wanted. There wasn't a single team in the NFL that was trying to hire Barry Switzer. He then followed up Barry Switzer with Chan Gailey, which nobody was trying to hire. He then followed up Chan Gailey with Dave Campo, which I guarantee you nobody was trying to hire. Then, as typical Jerry is, oops, I'm in trouble here. I need to get some credibility. He hired Bill Parcells. Absolutely. Bill Parcells could have gone anywhere he wanted.
He had to, though.
Then he got his stadium, so he runs Bill Parcells off by bringing in Terrell Owens, knowing that Bill Parcells would quit, which he eventually did. Follows up with Wade Phillips. Again, a man I happen to like, who unfortunately looks a great deal like me. But Wade Phillips was not a competitive hire that somebody was trying to outbid him for. He then follows that up with Jason Garrett, which he did not have to outbid anybody for. Follows that up with Mike McCarthy, who might have been able to get a job, but it was a small market for Mike McCarthy. And now he has Brian Schottenheimer. Nobody has ever tried to hire Brian Schottenheimer for a head coach. Now, again, he may be great, and I'm hoping he is. But Jerry Jones has had 9 head coaches. The Dallas Cowboys have had 10. And I would argue they've had some serious spare parts in that office on several occasions. Not a single coach of color. Now, just to continue this argument, out of all those coaches, they've had 1 black offensive coordinator, was a guy named Maurice Carthon, was hired by Bill Parcells. And oh, by the way, in 03 and 04, Maurice Carthon, as an offensive coordinator, did not call plays. We're not talking about Norv Turner here or Ernie Zampese. We're talking about Maurice Carthon. Then Brian Stewart was hired by Wade Phillips. Brian Stewart was the defensive coordinator, the only black defensive coordinator they've ever had. And oh, by the way, he didn't call plays.
Wow.
This is not Dave Wanstedt we're talking about. This is Brian Stewart. And there's never been a single special teams coordinator of color. So you have the head coach and the 3 main positions, and I would argue in this order, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and the special teams coordinator. And they've had 2 in 65 years of color who didn't have much responsibility. And then the proverbial cherry on top. A guy named Fritz Pollard in 1921 was a co-head coach for the Akron Firestone Tire Company or something, not whatever their team name was called.
Right.
And he was even referred to in the papers as the offensive running backs coach, but he supposedly was like the head coach for 1 year in 1921. Pre-NFL, I mean the legitimate NFL, but it's pro football. But the NFL started, really gaining steam in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Until 1989, when the Raiders hired Art Shell.
I remember.
The first black head coach in the NFL, Art Shell. Art Shell. And coincidence? Seriously, coincidence? So you've discriminated against these people of color for a couple hundred years in one fashion or another, and then it becomes this case. As limited as my options were in the very beginning of my professional life, I was white. I had certainly upper middle class parents who made a lot of things possible for me because when I got in trouble, my dad would send me the money. Take all that away.
Yeah.
Well, what if I was, those of you who like me, the 12 of you who like me, what if I was black? With all the so-called skills that I have, never would have hurted me. Never would have hurted me, which, again, I realize a lot of you would be very happy about. But it's just not lost on me that all I have to do is get a really dark tan, which I try to do every summer.
Well, you have the wardrobe, yeah.
And yet, if I had that dark tan with no college, a father, when I got my first job, gave me the money to buy my suit and tie so that I could actually get a job. What if I didn't have that dad. And oh, by the way, I walked into Omaha, which didn't have anybody of color on television. And I then say, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm going to be almost a franchise guy someday.
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell that I get that job. Now, to go back to where you started this, Mark, has the pendulum swung too far? Sometimes, of course. But it's that old proverbial line. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You acknowledge the fact that those who are opposed to DEI are opposed based on racism. And don't tell me you're opposed to DEI based on merit, because I will kill you in that discussion, and I will knock down every argument you have by simply pointing to all the people who have jobs, and their only real qualification is they're white.
Well, Dale, you've made a...
I told you I was going to be fired up about this
You've made
today.
a compelling effort today. And more important than that, Lila, this is why we brought Dale back.
Yes.
I mean, because to peel the layers of this onion and to talk reality, I think what's happened so much in the world we're in, there's no talk of reality anymore. We just make stuff up and we just put it out there and we say it over and over and over again. We seem to think that makes it real, and that's not the case. And Dale...
These commentaries, they're not just hot commentaries from Dale. They are politically charged, community charged. I know, Dale, you've missed expressing these opinions to the public, and we've missed them as well. And we all know there are some people who have not missed them.
And
Shocking. But no, again, I will always be appreciative of the platform because, as I told you, we agreed to, okay, we're going to do 6 months.
Right.
We're going to do 6 podcasts once a month for 6 months. And I sat down and I wrote 5 commentaries. And not all this. I mean, next week we're going to get into, why phones drive me nuts and technology. And then I got the other one following, which my wife thinks is the best thing maybe I've ever written.
Wow.
Which kind of shocking, but it's about, I think we need to go back to everybody has public service. But what I do hope people take away from this podcast is that, yes, I think I'm right. I think I've said this before, but a guy said, well, Dale Hansen's not always right, but he thinks he is. I said, well, of course I do. I mean, I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. I'm not Skip Bayless here. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it.
Right.
But all I really want to do, and I've said this every year I was at Channel 8, all I ever really want to do is spark the conversation.
Right.
I'm not afraid, as you well know from being on my patio the other night after dinner. I'm an open book. Let's talk about anything and everything because I want to know what makes you tick.
Right.
I want people to go to the water cooler and go, boy, Mark and Lila brought that stupid Hansen back and off he goes. But did you hear what he said about this? And I know for a fact, as arrogant as this may sound, that I've moved a few people. Over my years, I've had buddies of mine that were like, wow, I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm wanting people to do. When you just jump on board and say DEI is a disaster and it's horrific and it discriminates against white people, think it through.
Right.
Because despite some people's efforts, we're not going to be an all-white country ever again.
No.
Hate to break that to you,
Yeah.
but we're not going to be an all-white country again. And in the famous words of Rodney King, can't we all just get along?
Amen to that, bro.
I'm going to say a couple things. One thing that I do love about living in the United States is the fact that it is a melting pot. And if you know me and you've known me for more than 10 minutes, you know I love New York City. And New York City is the ultimate melting pot. And that is one big piece of why I love being in New York also, is that it is the ultimate melting pot on any street corner, any street, any avenue you walk down. So to your point, it's not going to stop being that. It's going to always be a melting pot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dale, thank you again, and I can't wait till next month, and I'm enjoying these more and more. And if you have any questions for Dale, or if you want to tell him how you don't want him back, we've only got like 1 or 2 or 3,000 of those types. So please send an email to info@nwagencies.com or give us a call at 214-352-5656.
Oh, and I want to circle back to one more thing.
Yeah, I want to put a button on it when we're all done. I thought you had one more commercial break. You wanted to sell some more insurance.
I would love.
Are we done? Are we done?
Oh, we can get going.
Okay. Well, I just want to put a button on. Go ahead, Lila.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to circle back to your question, or at the beginning of this episode, where you said, "Do I look at the price tag, or do I just buy what I want?" When it comes to theater tickets, I won't look at the price tag. So I should have immediately sprung into that, but I needed a few minutes to think.
It's funny you say that, because that's one of the things I absolutely look at. Unless it's Rod Stewart, then I wave everything off. Right. But here's the thing. I want to leave you with this thought, because this is one of the greatest lines that I think I've ever heard. One, because I think the line's funny, but two, because it was so quick and it's right on the spot. And it's my great friend, Judge Eric Boyer, and he said, absolutely use my name. He said, I'm already elected to office. They can't run me out now, no matter what. But we're sitting at my little favorite cigar bar one night with the judge and my very, very conservative buddy, Bruce. And I'm sitting in the middle, because I am indeed the voice of reason. So I've got this liberal guy on one side, the conservative guy on the other. And we're talking about DEI and affirmative action and the quotas and all the rest of it. And we're having a great debate about it, because Bruce, while he's wrong, is one of my absolute favorite people. And then the judge, of course, is always right. And if you don't believe him, just ask him. But my buddy Bruce looks at the judge after this long conversation, and he says, how long has this going to have to go on? How long do we have to keep doing this with affirmative action and quotas and DEI? And without missing a beat, the judge takes a little puff on his cigar and he goes, well, let's see. You've had it your way for about 150 years. So I would say we've got about another 50 years to go. And now the absolute reality is, we actually had it our way for about 200 years, I guess, and with another 50 to go. Now, and I read this article the other day, and it said, I don't think there are people in this country trying to take us back to the 1950s. They're trying to take us back to the 1700s. We have fought a good, long, hard fight to make this country the melting pot that it absolutely is. And if we don't wake up and realize that there is an element in our society that's trying to make it 1700 again, well, then in the great words of my friend Judge Boyer, we don't have just 50 years to go. We got 250 years ago to get it right again. And I just want people to stop and think about it, because it's not working the way we're doing it now. It's just not.
No. There you have it. Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen. Keep watching, because I think we lit something in Dale. We will come back next month and see you then. Thank you. If you're a Texas contractor and your insurance guy doesn't speak your language, fire him. We specialize in Spanish-speaking tradesmen. Call today and we'll review your current policy for free. No pressure, just straight answers. You've seen the guy that's your bro. That's us. And just like it protected my grandfather from the sun, we protect you from life's challenges. I'm Mark Villasana, owner and agency principal with Northwest Insurance.
I actually heard about NW agencies through a friend of mine who's been using them for years. Honestly, I've been really impressed. They made the whole process so much simpler than I expected. I was always used to dealing with a lot of back and forth, but with NW it was straightforward, and I always felt like they had my best interests at heart.
We're a full-service independent agency. That means we don't work for a single carrier, we work for you. We've got access to over 100 carriers, so whether you're insuring your home, your truck, or your electrical business, we'll find the coverage that fits your needs and your budget.
It's been a game changer, really. I used to worry a lot about getting the right coverage, especially with my business and home, but now I feel much more confident. They helped me understand my options and made sure I had the right policy for both my business and personal needs.
We specialize in helping hardworking folks, contractors, tradesmen, laborers, the people who keep Texas running. Whether you're a framer in Floresville, a roofer in Seguin, or a plumber in San Antonio, we'll walk you through the process in plain English or Espanol.
We'll pour you a cup of coffee, talk you through your policy, and make sure you leave with more protection and more peace of mind than you came in with.
This is Northwest Insurance. We've got you covered.
Insurance.